What's up, people? This is Aaron Anglin here, doing a quick Lightroom edit in here in Lightroom, just kind of going through some photos that I took actually this weekend of a friend of mine who asked me to take some photos of his band while they played at a charity event over at the University of New Mexico. It was a really small show. You can even argue it wasn't a show. They only had like really 30 minutes on stage, which 15 minutes of that were pretty much set up, so they had about enough time to play 3 songs, which, in most major concerts, you only get 3 songs to shoot the band anyway, so this actually kind of works. So, a couple of things about concert photography. One, lighting's usually not normally that good. Like, as you can see here, I was shooting at 5000 ISO, shooting at 3.5. I think I also dropped down to 3.2 at some point, but I was using a 70 to 200 2.8 for this entire thing, a Tamron 70 to 200 to 2.8, so it wasn't the greatest lens ever in existence, but it got the job done. So yeah, being that I'm shooting at such high ISO, I lose a lot of color detail for one, and also there's a lot of grain. You'll notice that specifically, especially with this lens camera combination. At high ISO, you get a lot of grains when you come in 1:1, but that's kind of normal. So the trick there is to not really worry about the grain so much. But since you're losing so much color detail, and the lights were really weird, they had these blue LEDs that you can kind of see where it's kind of spilling in right here, that really made this weird coloring thing and kind of fucked up skin tones. So with most of these photos, I'm pretty much going to go black and white right away. And so now that I've chosen black and white, I can start editing how I normally would. And you know me, I'm a contrast whore. I like bumping up my contrast. I like kind of taking down highlights and bringing up shadow detail. Kind of giving this really dynamic, sort of candid backstage kind of look. And that's kind of what I'm going for right now. So just do some really basic things. I'm going to keep that linear. Yeah, it looks good. And I was shooting fairly journalistically, candid, all that kind of stuff. If I was trying to sell these for publication, I don't want to do anything to these images that would seem dishonest. It's kind of like showing this is what was taken, this is how it was. There's some minor toning things that I did, but nothing to really change the physical aspects of the images. And so I really try very hard for that. You have some static shots of the equipment that they had. Local band, small band. This wasn't, I wasn't shooting, I don't know, even bands that are big today. I wasn't shooting like Soundgarden or anything where they had really ridiculous equipment. I realized I didn't go black and white. Sometimes it's okay to edit in black and white and color, or edit in black and white then go to color, especially if you're like me and I like upping up this contrast look. You got some more stuff of the band members setting up for the stage. This is John. He was the one who asked me to show up, which is kind of interesting because I ended up knowing their bass player, who's technically a temp, but I technically work with the bass player, who you might see it a little bit later. But yeah, I kind of like doing this kind of stuff. You'll notice that sometimes like contrast isn't the best thing, so sometimes you might want to tone things down. In this case, maybe not turning up the black so much and let some of the other details come in. Another reason I'm going black and white is that there's a lot going on in the frame color-wise, and it just doesn't mix right, and that's the main reason. That's another good reason to go black and white, is when the colors that are in the frame aren't exactly meshing it in the way you want them to, and that's another thing that was kind of happening here. The colors weren't really tying together very well, and sometimes just going black and white can, solve that, because you're taking out color detail and you're just making it to where you can make things a little bit easier to focus on one thing. More setup time. Like I said, there was a lot of setup time for this whole entire thing, and it was kind of unfortunate that these guys only got to do 3 songs, because, when you're playing a charity show that isn't the most organized charity show in the world, to be quite frank, you don't get enough time to really do much. And yeah, here's the bass player, Michael, who I actually work with. I think he's only a temp for them. I don't think he's a permanent bass player, though. That was the one thing about starting a band in high school. It was hard to find people who played the instruments that you needed them to play, and it was hard to find people who played the same style of music that you do. And I remember when I was in high school, I wanted to start a ska band. Could you imagine me in a band these days? That would be awful. Mostly because I'm decent at. I am musically inclined because I've been playing music since I was like in second grade, but I'm not that good still. It was one of those things where it's just like I could teach myself to be good at it, but I wasn't naturally talented at it. Yeah, so you kind of notice like a pattern in how I edit these. It's kind of very quick, simple, boost up the contrast sort of edits, and that's kind of what happens with people. They kind of just develop a style of editing and they kind of just stick to it. You'll notice that I believe Michael's bass right here is right here. That's what's blown out right here. So you can try and make things less distracting with black and white specifically. You can bring up contrast to make your subject the main thing in frame, and everything else kind of falls away. I felt like I lost a little bit of detail, so let me bring in a little bit more black. What happens when I bring in highlights in? Not quite. I like having some of that detail in there. Bring up shadows a bit more. There we go. More setup shots, trying to get all the instruments to go for the PA system, get the sound right. That's also another hard thing about doing these. You have 15 minutes to set up, no real sound check. You're kind of just going really on the fly. And, that's kind of like what I miss about music. There doesn't seem to be that much of that DIY quality anymore in it. And, that's something I miss in the music industry, is that whole do-it-yourself sort of mentality that you just don't get anymore in the music industry. It's all very kind of like, book a gig, or it's very, cut and paste sort of thing. It's no longer this sort of, we put a show on in our backyard that we put together in like 5 minutes anymore. It's very much kind of a controlled environment sort of thing. And, I miss the whole DIY aspect of music, but I guess it's still there. Yeah. So you notice that some of these images are getting better, like, already we're kind of seeing a little bit more different aspect. Sometimes when you're doing photo shoots, it takes some time for you to warm up and kind of like get an idea of what you're shooting and how much. And, I'm always one to say, not every shot you're going to take is going to be a brilliant shot. It's one of those things where you're going to take some bad photos, like things are going to happen, like mixed focus, or maybe your composition was a little bit more off than you thought it was. But, every now and again you will take a really good image. Like, this one's a pretty decent image. He's all in frame right here, following the rules of thirds. If there's anything that you might nitpick, it's like where it's cutting off the guitar right here, but for the most part none of his limbs are cut off whatsoever. You'll notice in some images I accidentally cut off the tops of heads, and once again, it's one of those things that it's not the easiest thing to do to shoot shows. There really are very difficult environments where you're kind of forced into a corner and you have to kind of react. Luckily, since I was the only one actively shooting, I had a lot more free reign. But if I was to be like at a bigger concert in a photo pit with like 20 other photographers, I'd be stuck in one spot and would just have to work with what I got. And that's really, I think, where you kind of become a better photographer, is not so much, I can do anything. It's how well do you work when you only have so much to work with. I think some of the better photographers out there can take, entry-level equipment and do really great things with them. They can back themselves into corners. Shooting on prime lenses, you don't have the convenience of shooting on a zoom lens, but you figure out ways how to work around that by just playing around with the images, or playing around with compositions, moving further away or closer to your subjects if you can. In this case, I can't move that close to these subjects, so that's why I ended up using my 70-200, is because I'm not going to be on stage with them. I have to be able to shoot them in a certain way. The one thing that I'm disappointed I didn't get to do, though, was I didn't get to shoot a wide enough shots to kind of have the whole band in frame. And, that's because I don't have a wide-angle lens at the moment. I have a 50-1.8, an 85-1.8, and a 70-200. None of those are very wide-angled lenses, and so I can't really shoot that wide. At some point, I'll invest in a 28 millimeter 1.8, get that wide angle with very low aperture going, with a very high aperture going. See, that's the thing about apertures. They're kind of reversed in number, so you don't know really how to describe them. It's really weird, but when you know photography jargon, it becomes a lot easier to understand. See, another important thing to do, especially since if you're doing these photos as a photo story, it's kind of important to keep your photos consistent and edit it in a certain way, because if say I was to decide to put this image in color but everything else in black and white, it would kind of throw off all the photos in general, because you want some consistency, and that's one of those things that just makes photography a little bit more difficult than it should be. Drummers are always a pain in the ass to shoot, though, because they're in the back of the stage, covered up by all of these this equipment and everything. It makes composition very difficult. Not to mention they're the ones kind of moving around the most in a stationary position, if that makes any sense. You can get guitar players to relatively be static for the most part, but drummers are all over the place at all times. See, here was a cool effect I got. You have the lead singer / guitar player, you have that blue LED light that they had back there, and I got this kind of flaring thing, which, kind of just illuminates it and looks super professional. But once again, the coloring is really weird. You notice that there's this blue sort of tint in his face, and if I was editing in color, I would try to make all the tones look a little bit more even. But since I'm going in black and white, it simplifies it a little bit more. So, I put in contrast. Sometimes if you're getting flaring, a good idea is to bring in shadow, actually, and it actually makes the subject come in a little bit more, like so. And see, this was one of those cases that I mentioned, top of the head's cut off, so that's one of those annoying things that if you're a lot more picky than I am about your images, you'd look at that and get really kind of upset. But I'm not as picky as some other photographers out there, which is good or bad. See, here's another really good image that you just happen to get. The one thing I always love about taking photos is that every time I ever take somebody's photos, my photos always end up becoming their profile pictures. And I think after within 5 minutes of posting this up on Facebook, the bassist who I work with went ahead and made this photo his profile picture that quickly, and I thought that was really cool. But yeah, let's see, can we get through all the photos within the next minute and a half? I don't know. See, that's also what I like about doing these rapid fire edits, is that I kind of show this is how fast I can do turnarounds for images. Basically 15 minutes I can go through 30 or so photos and get them all kind of turned out. Let's see. Yeah, see, here's another one where the blue light's coming out from behind. Also, you notice they're getting a little sweaty. It's hot. We're in a gymnasium. That kind of thing happens. Bump the contrast, take down some highlight a little bit, bring in some shadow to bring out him a little bit more. Whites, blacks for contrast, a little bit more of the clarity to add sharpness, especially since I was shooting with a lens that I can misfocus very often. Anyways, I think that's all I'm going to be able to get to in the allotted amount of time. My name is Aaron England. I'm the Comic Kid Photography. Check out my work down below. There are links to go check out my website at thecomickidphotography.com. Also, check out my Society 6 page, where you can actually buy prints of some of my work. I don't have any of these images up there currently, and I probably won't. But you can check out some of the cosplay images that I have done, which is what I'm more known for. So yeah, go check those out. Buy prints, buy me a beer by buying me prints, buying my prints. Sorry, I'm rambling now. Anyways, it's been really good seeing you guys, and I will